Hi, I'm John, and welcome to Product Spotlight. Today we have some models from Class 1 Modelworks to take a look at, and since it's kind of a tradition, I'm going to go hang out with my buddy Seth, and we'll look at them together. So let's go. Okay, so here we are at Seth's house once again, and this seems to be a tradition, Seth. Every time I have a Class 1 Modelworks, or almost every time, for some reason we end up doing stuff together around the same time, and so I just bring them over and let's have fun with these. These are really nice.
Well, I'm a huge Class 1 fan, and, every time you bring something over, we just see a model which pushes the envelope on whatever it is they're modeling.
Yeah. There's some foam off screen here coming out of your face, but let me tell people about these a little bit before we get into this. These are the ARI 5200 cubic foot 3-bay covered hoppers, right, from Class 1 Modelworks. And there are different versions of these, and they're going to be out either late this year or early 2025. The price on these is $59.99. And we're going to take a really close look at one of them, and then we'll kind of skim over the other ones. They are HO scale, and I mean, just pulling them out of the packaging, they're heavy, and we're going to weigh them, which we'll show you during the spotlight. But I'm just seeing all kinds of photo etch detail. Looks like rotating bearing end caps on these things. There's just all kinds of really good stuff going on here. So let's pick one of them, right? Let's pick one of them, and we'll start with that, and then we'll skim over the other two. I hope you don't mind. I picked the Union Pacific one. One thing I want to mention, and it's one of this is the kind of stuff I see when I look at models like this, is the first thing I notice is the conspicuity stripes, right? So this is a modern prototype, because they didn't even start using those yellow stripes on the cars, I think, until the 90s or something like that.
Late 90s. I think they're cool, but I model 99, so it's not correct for most of the cars on my layout.
Because they didn't have them yet?
Because they wouldn't have got them to a major repaint, and obviously only a few cars are brand new.
Sure. Now, I'm also noticing, and this is really cool, I think we'll point this out a little bit more detailed, but we tipped it back, right, so that you can kind of see the discharge gates, and I'm seeing red and blue. This is something I don't usually see on most models. So this is a detail I think that, maybe it's unique to this particular prototype. I don't know.
You see those trackside, and it's great, but it's rarely modeled.
That's my point.
Yeah,
rarely modeled. So something else I'd like to mention that's really cool is that these have the rotating bearing end caps. Now, I don't know how well you can see that, and I'll try to get a close-up of it. But that's also something you don't usually see on a lot of models like this. So this is a really, really high-end model.
And, there were several different styles of discharge gates available. Mm-hmm. And those are, supplied as appropriate for the prototype. So they really thought about it. Also, the little plates that you put the vibrator on to get, granular and powdered stuff out to discharge, those are all molded, and the detail is really good. It's not just a blob in about the right place.
But are they really molded? They almost they look so good that they look separately applied to me.
Well,
wow. Okay.
They're well done.
they look separately applied. Yeah. Well done. We'll do the job.
And again, these cars had this kind of unique triple cord along the top. That's been done as appropriate. They have the right number of panel lines. The early ones, I think, were 12, and then later they went for 11. So, it's past the rivet era, so you can't rivet count, but you can weld seam count. And
the weld seam counters, they're worse than rivet counters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just all the little detail is great. And then, let's see, what else do we want to talk about? We mentioned these are hefty cars, and part of the reason for that is that the whole lower part of the car is metal. So not only is it heavy enough to track well, but the center of gravity is low. So you're really going to get good performance. If you want to, load up a couple of cases and take your train down to the club, you can put them on the track with the confidence they're not going to string line because they're nice and heavy in track.
So now we're going to look at the brake end. And right, the first thing I'm noticing is just everywhere you look, there's detail. And what I'm talking about really is, separately applied handbrake. That's pretty par for the course these days. But look how finely rendered the uncoupling lever is. That's really nice. And moreover, if you look, and I talk about this all the time, Seth, on my other product spotlights, I call this stuff back in here the detail behind the detail. There is so much brake piping and the reservoir and just everything you could possibly expect to see on a model, and maybe some stuff you wouldn't even expect to see. It's all there.
And it's just beautifully rendered.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, all the plumbing seems to go somewhere. No blobs kind of hanging in space.
Right, blobs. That's a technical model term. Blobs.
That's a technical term.
Yeah.
But Mike and Steve are just committed to doing this stuff right, and it really shows.
And from this angle, you can see, again, this is the detail behind the detail. Now, Seth, I noticed on this particular car, there's no air hose detail, but the other ones have it. So I'm thinking the production run of these, they're going to have the air hose detail as well, which again, that's one of those things that not everybody includes that on their models. So I figured to show the other side of the car as well. I mean, it's the same really as the side we already looked at, but I always do once around the entire model on these things. And the printing looks good. The paint looks good.
Yeah, can't say enough nice things about these. And this is in an era where we're seeing some very, very nice high-end models, from a number of people. And you know who they are. Maybe at some point we'll have a little panel and talk about who's doing what. But definitely Class 1 is in the front row.
So we'll have a quick look at the A end. And once again, it's all that separately applied stuff. I just noticed that these little grabs that are separately applied also are super thin, fine wire detail.
And all of this stuff is metal, so it's more rugged. It's closer to scale. Again, the detail, just the closer you look, the better it gets.
And I just noticed something that I didn't mention on the other end, which is the crossover is also...
The crossover platforms?
Yeah, is also photo etched.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so the top... Talk about photo etched parts. Look at the walkways and the end platforms. And it may be hard to see from this angle, but the little grabs at the ends of the ladders, right, where you pull yourself up onto the top of the car, also are separately applied metal grabs. And look at the hatch detail. That's also really good.
And he supplies several different types of hatch detail depending on the prototype and the order. Traditionally the trough hatches were for grain, and the smaller ones where you were more concerned about contamination were for pellets and various other industrial chemicals. These seem to have both.
Must be a dual purpose car or something,
dual purpose car. I'm sure Steve can fill us in on this at some point, but the point is you can buy these assured that, they have the right ones for the car you've got. There's another one we have here that has a little bit more of the traditional trough type, but again, they're all there. They're all beautifully rendered. Yeah.
And when we show the other cars, we'll do the quick once over to show the difference in the hatches too. Okay. And now, I talked about the discharge gate detail kind of on a lark earlier, but now you can really see it. And you can see that the blue and red parts that I was pointing out before are consistent across the entire car, and they're on both sides. So yeah, this is... Now
here's another cool thing. Look down here. You can see that the deck connecting the hopper sections has got stiffeners, kind of a rib side effect. I've never seen that modeled on a hopper before.
I don't think I've ever noticed that before. And if you hadn't pointed out just now, I would have just kind of bypassed it. That's pretty cool. See, this is why I like doing spotlights together, because I don't notice everything. And I point out more obvious stuff. Like, again, looking at this angle, you can see, I mean, it wouldn't be any other way, but you can see that they're body mounted couplers, of course. They're metal wheels. Of course they would be on a model of this caliber. But that's the kind of stuff I notice, right? And you notice the little ribbed deck. I mean, that's just something that I would just not notice. So Seth, I just did the old switcheroo on the viewers. And now the observant viewers will notice that right away because these discharge gates have different detail.
That's right, because he has modeled the appropriate discharge gates for each prototype. So either you get the minor single, which we're looking at there, or the Sani lock, which was
that was the one with the blue and the red?
The blue and the red,
yeah.
Right. And that's a tighter lock, and that's for food grade and, chemicals that you really don't want leaking out because they're valuable or you'd really like to keep them where they're supposed to be.
Right. So here we have more of that really good photo etch details around the walkways there. And I mentioned before, Seth, that the hatches were going to be different on some of these. And this is an example, prototypes specific hatch detail there. On this one, square and rectangular.
There's square and, the longer style, but, generally trough style loading. Again, that was traditionally the way grain was done. The smaller ones typically would seal up for pellets and high value chemicals and stuff that might be more sensitive to contamination.
So here's a quick look at the A end. And I mentioned on the other one, I'm not sure what was going on with it, but these do have hose detail. And the other one that we looked at first should have had that on there too. It was just missing for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's just because these were samples. So I'm sure they've been handled a fair amount. And again, we're just very happy to have them at all.
Now I'm showing this angle of the break end because I think this angle with the light the way it is really shows off that detail behind the detail that I was mentioning earlier. And I think, Seth, that these cars seem to have more of this stuff than a lot of the, even highly detailed hoppers that I see that come across my workbench. So I think they've done a really good job with all that extra brake rigging and stuff.
Yeah, I think they really make an effort to get it absolutely as close to real as they can. And, these guys are, extremely talented scratch builders themselves. So, they really know what you're looking for.
Finally, for this car, we're going to show at least one side view of it. And you can see it's pretty much the same thing as we were looking at on the other one, just with different details. And, once again, this has the rotating bearing end caps and just looks really good.
Yeah. Did we point out earlier that the wheels are pre-weathered and there's some rust in there? So you don't even have to get in there and risk getting stuff on the rest of the truck and perhaps impacting the free rolling truck because they've already done it for you.
Yeah, I think I forgot to mention that, so that's a good point. All right, hey, I pulled another switcheroo, and now we're looking at the last one that we're going to do a quick once over here. Again, conspicuity stripes, rotating bearing end caps. We've seen all this stuff. I can't think of anything else new to point out on this, at least not from this angle. What about you?
No, it's generally the same as the last one we looked at. It has the single discharge hoppers and generally little square, smaller hatches between the troughs. This one's just in CITX. I think that's Citicorp leasing. So you see these everywhere. This is a very common style of car.
Yep. So in the interest of time, we're just going straight to the bottom here. And what you pointed out earlier, Seth, which was the little, what'd you call it? Ribbing, I guess?
Stiffeners, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm going to be on the lookout for that now, henceforth, right? When I do spotlights of other hoppers, just because now I'm curious because I don't remember seeing that before. So you may have had a point.
Once in a while. Generally, I keep it under my hat.
Okay, so the car weighs 6.4 ounces. According to my cheat sheet, it should be about 5 ounces. So this is heavy, which I think is good because, at least in my experience, cars that are heavy compared to the NMRA recommended practice tend to track better. And you don't get that inchworm effect when you have, stuff in a consist rolling down the track.
Yes.
So that's the look at these. I think they're going to be really popular when they come out, Seth, because these are just really nicely priced high-end models, really. I mean, $60, people would look at that and go, oh, I don't know, $60 is a lot, but look at all the detail you get. And there's nothing you could possibly add to it to make it better. Maybe some weathering, right? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, they're all going to have some weathering, although it'll be fairly subtle because these were relatively new cars. Although, the earliest came out, and I think the sheet tells us 2005. So by now, some of them would be pretty well beat up. But, as usual, use a photo. I mean, if you can't find the exact prototype, find something similar that's been in similar service in the same area and is about the same age, and you should be fairly close. What a great place to start. These are just very, very nice. And, as you say, you get a lot more visible detail on hoppers and tanks than you do on most house cars, box cars, reefers, things like that, just because it's all out there to be seen. So, and they've done a great job.
Well, I don't think there's anything else more that I can say about this. So thanks for doing this with me.